Nothing but the blood. 291. What can wash away my sins? Nothing but the blood of Jesus. What can make me whole again? Nothing but the blood of Jesus. Oh, precious is the flow that makes me white as snow. No other fount I know, nothing but the blood of Jesus.
Please bow with me. Dear Lord, thank you for this time that we have to gather together here in safety and to be able to worship you and to have this time to study more about your word and sing praises to your name. And please help us to take this, what we're about to learn this next hour, and take it to our hearts and remember it so that we can spread your word throughout the world. And please be with the speaker of the hour, and thank you for sending your son Jesus. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
I like it. Get out of here, you make me sick. Good morning. How is everybody today? All right. It's always good to be with you, and I'm excited to be here today. We're, as you can see, still in our book, His Family is the title. We found this in the Jenkins Institute and have a lot of good material there. And as you know, this year, we have every week been going through a different lesson having to do with some aspect of the Lord's church. And so we are His family, and that, of course, has been the theme for the year. Last year, we did another similar type study every week using different speakers, and kind of the subject matter would change from time to time. But next year, Lord's willing, starting in January, Brother Black, are you still planning to do James? Okay, so we're going to be starting a study in the New Testament book of James with Brother Black on Sunday mornings, and that'll be for a quarter. And so we're going to be on the same quarter system, try to be on track with everyone downstairs. And then on Wednesday nights, starting, Lord's willing, next quarter, January, I'll be teaching a class on Wednesday nights on the Gospel of Mark. And so I hope that you'll avail yourself of those opportunities and look forward to those classes. I've enjoyed this study, and we talked about, me and Chris and Herman were discussing whether we should continue on something like this or something else. And I thought maybe it's time to get back to something a little more structured where you kind of know what to expect every week, because you never know who's going to be behind the pulpit when you come here on Sunday morning. And so we'll know we're going to be in good hands on Sunday morning with Brother Black. And so we're looking forward to that. We're in chapter 43 of our book today. In case I failed to mention that, and I did. We're in a new section, the last section of the book. It's an Acts chapter 2 type of church is the section we're in. And the first lesson in that is devoted to evangelism. And so that's where I wanted to take a few moments this morning and share with you some things that you know a little bit about. Maybe you don't know what you'd like to know. And if you have any questions, I'm standing right here, so you can raise your hand, and this is a Bible class, and feel free to ask me those questions. But what I'm going to share with you now, I'm hoping will do for you what the events of the last couple of years actually have done for me. And that is to increase your faith, to strengthen and encourage your faith. I'm honestly surprised at the level of challenge that I've been presented with without even knowing it was going to happen. Let me tell you why I'm saying this. As you've heard mentioned before, when Chris and I were first installed as elders, we were meeting the first time in the library, me and Chris and Herman, and we were discussing among ourselves what we wanted to do as far as setting a tone for the congregation here, where we want to go in the future. And as you remember, one of our first goals was, let's pay off this building and get this albatross out from around our neck. And because of your generous contribution, we were able to do that more quickly than we thought we would. And so we're thankful for that, and we give God the glory for that. But also you are to be commended because you participated so well, and it was appreciated. And it allowed us then to pursue our priority, which is worldwide evangelism. Not just evangelism here, we continually are going to do that, absolutely, but also to focus more outside just from where we are here. We didn't know where we were going to go. We had no idea. We just knew that among ourselves, our goal was to find a place in the world where the Lord's church did not have a presence, or a very weak presence, or we knew that our brotherhood as such was not really pouring a lot of time and interest. We wanted to go places others had not gone. We didn't know where that was. We just knew that's what we wanted to do. Now, unbeknownst to us, almost literally at the same time, while we were having that discussion, a man by the name of Raphael that you have met, who's spoken to us, just a prince of a man, Raphael, who works with a school in Panama, Central America, was introduced to my nephew-in-law, Aaron Stice, who had gone there to the school to do some technical work. And while they were there, they ran into one another, made friends together. And in their conversations, it was stated by one of them or both of them, we want to go into a mission work where no one's going. And it just so happened that Raphael had just asked one of his teachers, well, where would that be? Where could we go? And he'd heard about Uruguay. And so Aaron came back from his trip, and he first went to the Bremen elders, and he went, I think, to Carolyn, but then he came to us. And when he presented it to us, we were thrilled. We thought, this is an answer to our prayers. And as I stand before you now, I say, it was an answer to our prayers. And I thought, that's just tailor-made for us. I mean, this is the work we need to be doing. And so we were very much interested in it. But we didn't have a clue what we were going to do and how we were going to do it and what we needed to do first, how we were going to raise funds, et cetera, et cetera. We were baffled, actually, and wondered what we could do. Now, something else was happening at the same time I just described all that to you. There's a sweet lady in Saltos, Uruguay, who has been a member of the church for several years, and there was a church meeting in Saltos years ago, but as you've heard before, the church had just fallen apart after the preacher suddenly died, and no one was there to carry on the work. So she was there by herself, wanting to maintain, wanting to hold on, did the best she could, but had no help, no support. But she started praying, God, send someone here to help with evangelism. So we met Aaron, and then he introduced us to Raphael. First time we met Raphael, it was in the fellowship hall, and we were sitting at the table. He and his wife were eating Chick-fil-A. He thinks it's the grandest thing on planet Earth. He loves fried chicken. It's pretty good stuff. It's far better than Zaxby's. We'll get into that later, but it's good stuff. But they're eating their, Chick-fil-A, and we were discussing the future, and we're all excited. We're all on board. We all agree we need to go to Uruguay. We need to establish a presence there. We knew about the lady in Saltos. We're going to try to go visit her. And in fact, Aaron and Raphael had already done that, and then wanted to go back and see her and try to get that work restarted. But there's a plot of land there that we could potentially buy, and of course we need to get a speaker, a preacher to go and work there full time. All this was on the table, and we're all looking at each other saying, well, that's great. And I'm thinking, yeah, but how are we going to reach out and how are we going to raise the funds? I don't know who to contact first. I'm literally sitting there having this thought in my mind, and my phone rang. And I'd never seen this number before. It's from Colorado. I answered the phone. He said, hello, my name is so-and-so, and I'm calling from the church in Colorado. I heard that you all are sponsoring the work in Uruguay. I wanted to know if I could contribute to the cause. And I'm like, okay, sure. And I shared that with the other brothers. They were like, that's spooky. I said, yeah, it kind of is. Not spooky in a bad way, but in a good way. It's like, you believe the Lord was sending us a sign or telling us? I don't know. I'm not sure I can get into all that, but I just thought, that's really kind of neat. And so we got to talking to Brother Raphael. Before we knew it, we had churches all over pouring money to it. I'm like, and so then we had to get with Ronnie, what are we going to do? We still haven't figured out exactly how to put it all together. We kind of got a plan, and it's coming together. But I was amazed by that. I just thought, this is really incredible. And then, of course, Raphael came and made his tour of the United States. And I'm happy to tell you, this morning, right now, as I'm speaking, he's in Saltos. Raphael is. Just arrived there last night. And he's with the church that's there in Saltos. And he has money available to him to buy the property that we were hoping we'd be able to buy, to pay an architect, which we hope we'd be able to raise money to buy. And we still have money will be left over. And so we can now begin the last phase of this, which is to build a building. Some have already even expressed a desire to go perhaps later this year in the spring, maybe before the Passover. I'd like to see that happen. I don't want to wait till the week of the Passover, because then everybody will be at that Lad to Leaders thing, and so won't be anybody here to go on a trip. But if we could get away from the Passover and maybe go a little earlier, a little later, convince Raphael of that, and Marcos and Carlos. But I get ahead of myself. I know several are saying they want to go. Hopefully at that time or by that time, we'll be able to find the funds necessary to buy raw material, to build a structure, to build a roof, to dry it in, to have a presence, to get started with the work there in that town. We're excited about that. In the meantime, while that's going on, tens of thousands of dollars has been contributed to this work. And we're like, what do we do with it? I don't know, Ronnie, just put it somewhere in a bank account. And so we made a bank account. We start pouring all this money in it. And so we're now going to buy that land. Only God can do stuff like this. This is not me. This is not Chris. This is not Herman. This is not us. It is, but it isn't. It's just, there's no way to explain this other than the Lord saying, you need to do this. And so here, all this is coming together. But while that was going on, we found out about Carlos, who was more than willing, and in fact did, as a graduate of the school there in Panama. Raphael knew him. We were able to raise the funds for him to go and start working there, and he did. But he was by himself, not married, and he had a good friend that he was in school with in Panama. His name is Marcos, so Carlos and Marcos, good friends, fishing buddies. They both were able to wind up getting enough funds for them to stay there, and that will continue for a few more months. Then the fund will run out for Marcos. We'll have to replenish that, so maybe we can hit you up for that, maybe help pay some of those extra costs. But the two of them are working very well together, and I want to take a moment and share with you some of these things. By the way, I just threw these slides together before a class, so I didn't remember to switch them over. This was Raphael the day he left us to go back to the airport. Now, this is Marcos and Carlos. And these two young men, graduates of the school, are now working in Saltos. And they're really cool guys. And I don't mean that in a bad sense. They're easygoing, they're very humble, they're hardworking, knowledgeable. Marcos is really adept at bringing back wayward members and has already been successful in doing that. But also, I learned, in fact, this was on a day when I was on my WhatsApp application on my phone, and I was talking to this young man here, and I was in broken Spanish, he was in broken English. We were laughing at each other most of the time, but he was carrying me around the city of Saltos. You can see the sky is beautiful there, but he was showing me around the city, and he said, this is the orphanage we're working at. And I said, I didn't know you were working at an orphanage. He said, yes, we are. By the way, it's really neat, too, with these two guys, because with WhatsApp, we have day by day, minute by minute updates. We can talk to them anytime. We can video them, we can call them, we can text them, we can send pictures or receive pictures, whatever. All that's possible now with the technology available to us. Anyway, show me the orphanage. I thought that's interesting because I had just recently, as I'll say in a moment, learned about the work in Kenya and the orphanage there. And I thought, well, I wonder why everybody around the world's working with orphans and we don't even talk about it. It never even seemed to come up anymore. But anyway, I thought that's interesting, but what's going to come of it? Well, as that was going on, as you can see, there were Bible studies that are being engaged in, and that's happening. And then 2 weeks ago, I think it was, we got word that 2 of those young men, orphans, were wanting to obey the gospel and did. And then in that very service, after we had learned about all that, Chris received, well, we all received, but Chris carries his phone with me. I think that's blasphemy, but he has his phone with him in the church service, and he was able to check and see, real time, that we have 2 more. So we had 4 in that one weekend that obeyed the gospel. And so we have new converts. Last night I received this message. This is the message I received from Carlos. And now I'm just going to read the word for word, what he said. He said, this week we had a meeting with the managers of the orphanage, and they are open to us coming and working with 50 children and young people. On December the 19th, we want to carry out an activity with them, share God's love with them, pizza, candies, juices, and games. Now, this is the first time he mentioned it to me about their work among the orphans. I thought, well, I'm not sure where this is going, but we see the results, and the results are they're reaching the lost, and we're thankful for that. Anyway, that's kind of a quick rundown on what's happening, and that's because of your contribution to pay off this building and to put us in a position where we could oversee, and we are now the overseeing church for the Uruguay mission, and for that, I personally, and I know you are as well, very thankful that we have that great privilege to do that. A few years back, did somebody tell Chris what I just said? I mean, anyway, yeah, he let Matt do what?
You recap that again. So we bought the land.
We're in the process right now of buying it.
So we hadn't started building.
No, we hadn't started the building. There's an existing structure there, but it's got to be torn down. It's just in the way. But that's the next phase. But yes, we have enough for the architect too. So that would be like $10,000 US dollars. Well, we have enough for that too. And so, and more money has been promised to come in. And we have people in Mississippi that are promising to take teams of workers to go there. We have some here wanting to go and work. And if you're interested, certainly see me or whoever, and we'd be more than glad to hook you up. Or see Adam. I know Adam is planning to go. And if you'd like to talk to him about it and put him on the spot, then he'd be glad to take your information and maybe work something out in that way. But yes, it's going very well. The work is really doing very, very well. Several years ago, I don't know who did it, but somebody, I think it's Paul Holbrook, set up a YouTube account for us, and we started broadcasting our services online. And I didn't think much of it at first. I thought, well, that's neat. And for about 6 or 7 years total, we were able to reach, I think, around 11,000 people in maybe a 6 or 7 year time period. We had maybe 70 or 80 followers. That's good. I mean, we're reaching people. Well, we had a business meeting in the library, and I'll never forget. I remember the day it happened. I don't know why this is weird, but I remember Justin Key just made a passing comment. He said, what we could do to make our YouTube page better, we could just link it to Facebook. I'm like, whatever. I mean, I don't know, whatever. Okay, cool, neat. Next thing, but he did. He took it upon, and he went and linked YouTube to Facebook. We have almost 1 million views now on YouTube. We have, we're approaching 1,100 followers, and that's all in the last year and a half. Carol, interestingly, likes to do stuff on YouTube. I mean, he does. It's like, for him, it's like eating Doritos. You get a fresh bag of Doritos, and you take one, and you got to keep going. You just keep going. So he keeps putting out shorts. And what he's doing is really tremendous. My point is, I think it was September, early September, I saw a message on Instant Messenger sent to the church from this young man in Kenya. And I'd seen others before, but his intrigued me. He said, I want to talk to you about being a New Testament Christian. Okay. So I contacted him. And by this time, Raphael had shown me and turned me on to WhatsApp. So I asked Duncan, I said, do you have WhatsApp? He said, I do. I said, well, why don't we get together this coming Monday and we'll just have a Bible study together? I would love that. So I was sitting right there on a Monday morning and spent about 2.5 hours on the phone with him on WhatsApp. And I learned from this young man. He had grown up in the Seventh-day Adventist church, and he and his father and family had left that, gone into the Pentecostal movement. But now they're saying, you know, we're not satisfied with these man-made denominations. We want to be New Testament Christians. Okay, well, and I've seen your YouTube videos. I found it on Facebook. I'm like, oh, you did, huh? Yeah, I saw a short on Facebook, and it took me to YouTube page, and I've been watching your sermons, and I wanted to talk to you about New Testament. So we talked about it, and from there established a week-by-week study in the book of Acts. We're on chapter 16 this week. Tomorrow, Lord's willing, we'll be dealing with chapter 16. Justin, thank you, sincerely. What you did seemed to me so inconsequential at the time, and I thought, whatever. That's the point I'm making is, and I was visiting with Robert Davison yesterday, and I told him, I was telling him about the work in Kenya, and he said, brother, that's just wonderful. And he said, I'm so proud of you. I said, it's not me. He said, well, just put it this way. The Lord's working with Bill Rica. And I said, yes, sir. I can't argue with that. It is the Lord's doing. And I want to give you some reason why I'm saying that. Of course, I mentioned the Facebook thing. Some of you saw several Wednesday nights ago where I got pictures from Duncan, who's in the foreground here. And these are some of the orphans. They have 210 altogether. These are some of the orphans that they have taken under their care to provide for them, what they can, and are doing a good job. And you all are helping with that. So every third Sunday, as you know, we take up a collection. We had $2,200 last week we were able to send to them, and that was a great blessing. And they're so gracious. I wish you could hear them. I wish you could see them. And hopefully, Lord's willing, very soon you'll be able to do that. There's an 8-hour difference there. They're 8 hours ahead of us, so it's late in the evening over there now. We probably could get them this time, and I hadn't thought about that, but they could actually talk to us at this time. And I want you to meet them when you have that opportunity. Something maybe you didn't know, and this is the only thing until day before yesterday, the only thing that Duncan ever asked for money-wise. He said, could you help us buy Bibles in our language and maybe some in English? And I said, well, we'll see what we can do. I talked to the elder and said, let's do that. So we bought $2,000 worth of Bibles, and you see here pictured them distributing those Bibles to the people there in that part of Kenya. Anyway, this picture here is the man in the background there. You see him in the trees standing. That's Isaac. He's Duncan's father. And this picture is meaningful because this was after my first study with Isaac, because I've been studying with him as well. My first study with him on baptism. And he was greatly moved by the study. And Duncan sent me this picture. He said, because my father has started this class on baptism. And he's teaching these people on baptism. And when the class was over, this class, all of them got up and went to him and said, we want to know more about it. So they have established what he called yesterday morning a baptism class. I said, that's all wet. But again, he started a baptism class, and they're presently teaching a number of people. But this was after my first study with him. Yesterday morning, I got up at 2:30 in the morning, and I was able to get myself together and awake enough to preach at 4 o'clock to that group, and I'll show you them in just a moment. But before I was able to do that, I got these pictures. This is Duncan here, and he's being baptized into Christ for the remission of sin. This is Isaac, his father. This is Francis. He's one of the leaders there in the church. And there was one other, and I don't have a picture of them. But I do want to share those pictures with you. I know many of you saw it on Facebook. But it was truly an exciting day. Regina actually got up with me yesterday morning. And I'm telling you that because, and Herman had the same experience. And I did too. That's why I want you to see it. Because with WhatsApp, you can actually listen to and see these people in the eastern part of Africa. And it's like they're in the same room with you. I mean, it's just It's amazing. And so she was there with me yesterday morning, and they saw her, and they were all smiling. They don't smile when I speak, but they were smiling when Regina was with me, so I need her with me more often, I suppose. But they were smiling, and they were happy. By the way, I want to say this while I'm thinking about it. When I had a chance to speak to these men, because I saw them one by one afterwards, I've never in all my life seen such joy on their faces. They were truly rejoicing. They were all exclaiming, I'm born again. I'm in the family of God. And they were just literally, just beyond themselves with excitement. And so I felt like this is like the Ethiopian eunuch thing. He went his way rejoicing. They were truly rejoicing. And they were so happy. And I said, well, what about the others? He said, we have a baptism class, and we're trying to finish that up. And in a few days, we hope maybe a few hundred are going to be baptized. We don't know yet, but that's the plan. So he told me yesterday, he said, oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you this part. We bought plane tickets to go there. I'll be leaving Regina and myself and Herman on the 14th of January, and we'll be returning in 10 days. It's not a short kind of a preliminary trip, but we are going to go there to see firsthand, meet with these people, get to know them a little better, teach them a great deal more. But while we're planning this trip, and we're excited about it, he told me yesterday, he said, well, you'll be staying with me at my father's place. We have a place for you all to stay with us. Well, that's going to be nice. He said, and then he was on the video with us, and he said, I want to show you, and to Regina, the place where we're going to be worshiping, because on the Saturday we're there, just like yesterday, we'll have a class with the orphans there, and we'll be doing our usual Bible study. And then the next day, the Lord's Day, we'll have worship. He said 5 churches in our area, in our town, have already expressed great interest in, don't laugh, but they call me the man of God. You laughed. Vicki, come on. I know okay, fine, I get it. But I thought it was kind of interesting. I thought, me? Who you? They call me the man of God. But they're intrigued with the man of God. And as his father, this is the really good thing. His father said, he's preaching the original gospel. Man, that just made my day. I thought, that's what I've been trying to do my whole life. I want the original gospel. I don't want anything new or different. The original gospel. So that's what they said. And so 5 other churches had said, we want to come. And he said, that's just as of now. He said, by the time the man of God gets here, we'll probably have more. He said, we have at least minimum 1,000 people are going to be here that Sunday. I said, wow. And so he's showing us the pasture or field or whatever outside where they worship. He said, this is where we're going to buy or rent chairs. By the way, could you help us rent chairs? I didn't know this. The only time he's asked for money was one of Bibles, and he said, by the way, I'm going to make a list of how much it costs to rent the chairs, and I'll send you a bill. I'm like, oh, okay. So I don't know how that's going to work out, but maybe we could all just kind of pitch in and just do what we've been doing like with the orphans and have enough chairs for everybody to sit in. I don't know. I know this. I'm overwhelmed with the idea that I would have an opportunity to preach. And he said it's not just those churches, but those preachers, he called them the pastors of those churches, want to meet me, and they want to bend my ear. They want to quiz me about what's happening. Which he said, we're going to set up a meeting, call it a seminar. Okay, I'm down with that too. I don't know what we're going to get into, but I know that when I look at what's happening, I think Brother Robert was right yesterday when he said, this is God's doing. I didn't do this. Justin, you didn't actually do it, and Carol didn't actually do it, and you all didn't actually, but all of us together with our little bit of effort, with our loaves and fishes, look what God did. Isn't that amazing? I don't know about you, but I'm like, wow, look what God is doing. And so yesterday, 5 obeyed the gospel. And again, this is just there in Kenya. I had a report given to me yesterday, and I want to share this with you. Isaiah, not the prophet from the Old Testament, but Isaias, or Isaiah as we call him, is a missionary that we have had a part in. We don't sponsor him per se, but we do have a part in paying him every month to do the work of the Lord. I'm just going to cut to the chase here. He said they visited more. This is like the first 6 months. Over 203 homes were visited, 130 contacts, 78 Bible studies were made, 10 baptisms came from that. Yesterday, Loretta was talking about, my sister, about another report that's just come in. I don't have a copy of that, but it was also quite encouraging. but he's doing a great work there. And again, he sends his greetings to the church here and his regards to all of you. And so I didn't mention the Philippines this morning. I mentioned to the elders I wouldn't do that because we just had Brother Brown here a couple of 3 weeks ago. And as you know, the work is going great there. But we're not actually sponsoring or overseeing those works. We're just participating in them, which those are good works. And we're happy to do that. But the Uruguay work is our work. And it looks like the Africa work just becoming. Again, this is just something that happened. It's like it's organic. It just erupts on its own. And the only way to explain it is apparently the Lord is showing us this is what he wants us to do. But anyway, our lesson today, by the way, all that was introductory, the lesson today is on evangelism. And I want to just talk briefly to you about the fact that all of us are evangelists. In Mark 16, 15 to 16, who can quote it for me very quickly? I'm sorry, I can't hear you. That's right. But what's the first part of verse 15? What does it say? Go into all the world. And I've been preaching that for years, and I thought, well, yeah, it's a lofty idea, and I know that sometime when I preach it, I see the looks on your faces. You're like, yeah, I know it sounds good if a local church could do that. You know, we're actually doing that. We are actually, I say we're this is, I'm going to pause here because this is something that really humbles me. But in the field and the work of evangelism, we are co-laborers with God. This is his work. And we are privileged to participate with God. And I'm basing that on Paul's letter to the Corinthians. But again, we are workers together with him. So we plant and we water, but God gives the increase. And so it's a joint participation. And so when I think about going into all the world, how did we get to all the world? I didn't even know we had 500 countries in the world. But we've been seen in at least 500 countries. That's a lot of people, a lot of places. And I want to say this about our worship service. And I don't want you to be intimidated. We're being watched as I speak. And we will be watched again in the next 24 hours by a number of people. But something that had been said to me more than once in recent days. I love your singing. They never say anything about the preaching. I love your singing, and I love the way you organize yourselves, the way we dress, and the way we conduct the Lord's table. I think that's interesting because what that says is that we're being seen, we're being watched, and we're teaching. You're teaching people, even just by being here, just participating in worship. You're teaching people valuable lessons they would otherwise not have. So what a great blessing. We have cameras and we have microphones and we have an internet. And I don't know how that thing works, but I know that it reaches people everywhere. And it's just a wonderful thing. And so we're told to go and make disciples of all the nations. In Acts chapter 8, there was a great persecution led by Saul, who was very angry and determined to stamp out Christianity if he could. And he was there at the stoning of Stephen. What a great man he was. What a great preacher he was. And yet he was stoned to death. And in verse 4, Luke tells us that the result of that severe persecution was that they were scattered abroad. And what that tells me is that the early Christians are not really that much different than ourselves. Sometimes we have to get kicked in the seat of the pants to do what God told us to do to start with. When Jesus went back to heaven, what did he say? You quoted it. Go into all the... And then he said, in Matthew's account, go and teach all nations. And Mark used the term creatures. Every creature. Everybody. Go as far as you can, as wide as you can, and preach as much as you can, to as many as you can. And yet they weren't doing that. If you look at Acts, all this great triumph of the gospel was happening in and around the city of Jerusalem primarily. And it hadn't really ventured out very far. And so this great persecution erupted and people went everywhere. But something else Luke says is, except the apostles. Now, at that moment in time, the apostles were seen, and indeed were, the leaders of that church there in Jerusalem. And as the leaders of that church, they stayed behind. So who went everywhere preaching the word? The deacons, the elders, the members of the church. Everybody. So the question I'm asking you, are you an evangelist? I know, but while you're thinking that, you think, well, I'm not going to be a public speaker. You don't have to be a public speaker to be an evangelist. Evangelist is simply someone who's proclaiming good news. You're a proclaimer of good news. And you can do that one-on-one, privately. You can do it publicly. As a herald, you do it more publicly. But as an evangelist, you can do it in any context. So you're preaching good news. Well, why are we not doing more of that? I think maybe we have allowed ourselves, many of us, to assume that, the gospel is going to go forward. Look at our preacher. Look at what we're doing there. And look at that YouTube stuff. Look what Justin's doing. And look what Carol's doing. All the time, the gospel is just going here and there and everywhere. I can just continue doing what I'm doing. I don't have to do anything. Well, let me put it to you this way. What if every one of us in this room right now, just this room, I don't know how many's in here. Did you count Brother Pettingill? Did you get a count? 67. In this room, okay. 67. What if 67 people went out and converted one person? How many would we have in class next week? Somebody do math. Come on. 134. And if 134 people went out and taught one person, how many would have the next week? You think, well, how did the gospel turn the world upside down in the first century? They didn't have the internet. They didn't have microphones. They didn't have all this neat stuff. They just had their mouths. And as they went, what did they do? They evangelized. So to be an evangelist, you have to think. You have to train your mind to think evangelistically, so that when opportunities present themselves, and they do all the time, you're just not paying attention. That's why when Jesus said in John 4, lift up your eyes. We're so often fixated like that stupid sheep. We're looking at what's in front of us. I'm focusing on the lump of grass that's feeding me and nourishing me. And this is what I'm worried about right now. But if you just lift up your eyes, look what's there. Look what's available. No doubt the people in the city had just heard from the woman. They're coming out in throngs. And Jesus said, lift up your eye. Look at these people. They're coming out here by the grove because they want to hear about the coming kingdom. And the same thing is true for us. We miss opportunities. Jesus was asking for a drink of water. And from that conversation, was able to convert an immoral woman and make her into one of the best evangelists we've ever seen in just a few moments. What are you capable of? And sometimes I think maybe we think, well, I'm not sure the need's that pressing. Now, that's why I was saying last week, if we're lost, we're really lost. It's not just a question of, well, I missed heaven. No, you gained hell. And that's, no one wants to even think about it. In fact, it's so awful that a lot of preachers and theologians have given up on the idea God couldn't possibly do that. He didn't mean that, but he does. He actually does. And the one that said more about it was Jesus. And why would Jesus talk so much about the fire of hell? Well, what else would drive him to the cross? What else would motivate him to do what he did other than, I'm doing this so you won't have to go there? He doesn't want anyone. It's not his will that any perish, but that all come to repentance. So when we talk about the need's great. It's urgent. Literally, people's lives, their houses are on fire. We just need to get them out of the burning structure. I had a teacher say several years ago when I was in Montgomery that he was thankful for some mainline denominational churches that were going into Latin America. I've been going to Latin America, and I had run into the major issues, the mountains you have to climb, the hurdles you have to overcome to talk to people to get that denominational thinking out of their minds. That denominationalists went there and planted in their mind. This guy, one of my teachers, was thinking God that they're going. I said, how could you say that? That makes sense to me. And he's like, well, I know they're not preaching the true gospel, but at least they're teaching people about God. I'm like, I'm not even going to respond to that in this class. I'm just going to say, we cannot wait for others to do this work. This is the Lord's command to us. I can't speak for anybody else. You can't speak for anybody. This church can't answer for any other church. We can only answer for ourselves. And so, I'm going to ask again, are you involved in evangelism? And when Peter was in the house of Cornelius talking about Jesus, he told Cornelius as he began his discussion that Jesus of Nazareth went about doing what? Good. What do you mean doing good? Well, he explained healing the sick, you know. Of course, in the sermon that he preached on the Judgment Day, and he talked about how we're going to be drilled on Judgment Day. You know, did you feed me, clothe me, visit me? You remember that scene. And so it's the day-to-day personal care and attention that we do or don't do to the Lord. And that's how we'll be judged. But what about doing good? When I ask people, could you help with these orphans? We care about orphans just because they're orphans. They have nobody. They've been either abandoned by their family, rejected by their family, or their families have died and they're left with no one else. But they need something, someone to help them. You know what? That's just in and of itself a good thing. But there's a huge byproduct that comes from that. While we're encouraging them and helping them with food and clothes and, yes, a secular education, guess what else they're learning? And Regina saw that yesterday as they sang, Jesus loved the little children, and about 15 versions of it. I don't know how that's possible, but it's the neatest sound. And when they do that African sound, it's beautiful. They think our singing is beautiful. Anyway, they're singing beautiful. But these orphans are up there singing. And when they get done, then one by one they come up and they do memory work. I'm talking chapters in English. And their native tongue is not English. But in English, they're quoting. And I'm like, that's impressive. So these young people, they're not just being fed food and clothes. They're being fed spiritual nourishment. That's a good work, just like our Dorcas work. It's a good work, and we're able to reach a lot of people, influence a lot of people. But you know, it's not just the works that we do collectively. What could you do in your neighborhood, at your work, or with your family? Maybe over the coming holiday, think of something you could do to do good. As we have opportunity, let us do good unto all men, especially those of the household of faith. A couple more thoughts here, and then I'll let it be yours. Andrew went and found his brother Peter. Aren't you thankful he did that? And look what Peter did. Look what a difference Peter made. You don't hear much about Andrew after that, do you? I mean, he's there, but you read a lot about Peter. But how did Peter come to know the Lord? Well, he had a brother that cared enough about him to bring him and introduce him to the Lord. Maybe over the holidays when you're eating your turkey or whatever, you can say, hey, I'd like you to come to church with me Sunday. Or I'd like to have a Bible study with you. Or how do you feel if you were to die today? Would you go to heaven or hell? I mean, just so many ways you can broach the subject. I mean, get to the point. But talk to family and friends. You can help other evangelistic causes like Romans 10. How shall they preach without a preacher? How shall they preach unless he's sent? You got to be sent, and that involves money. Our Philippians, the whole letter, Paul is thanking the church there for their support in the gospel and support the local church here. And let each and every one of us ask, Lord, what would you have me to do? What would you have me to do? And how can I help carry the gospel? This is really an exciting time for evangelism. And I want you all to get that excitement. I want you to understand it and to sense it. And I want to encourage you to get involved in it as much as you can. And maybe, Lord's willing, in the near future, we'll be able to have a video conference with Isaac and Duncan and some others over there. And you get to see firsthand what it's like there. And also in Uruguay. And maybe even Guatemala, if we can get him on WhatsApp. But pray for these works and do what you can as we continue to carry the gospel forward. Thank you for your time and attention.
You're talking about opportunities. There might be one that most people don't think about, but we have these videos on YouTube and Facebook.
Yes, sir.
And they have these algorithms, which are basically just giant math problems that tell what videos can be pushed and shared. If you see one of our videos that are already listed on there, don't just smile and scroll by. Like it, comment on it, share it. That encourages the algorithm to push that video to more people.
That's a simple thing to do. It doesn't cost you anything.
So Carol and I can post all the videos we want, but if nobody interacts with them, Facebook won't do anything. So that's something small you can do.
Very good point. Thank you for that. Thank you, Justin and Carol, for what you all are doing. But yeah, like, comment, dislike, and still comment or whatever. But share. Do I? Yeah, it gets the attention. Yeah, the more you watch it, the more that the algorithm picks it up. All right. Thank y'all.